So everyone, and welcome. Since the last few times I've talked, well, mostly about blast gorillas, I thought that maybe this time would be better if we did something different, where we're now going to talk about characters who are cute, who are very gay, and more importantly, who are Excel gorillas, or just in general, Magia type characters. So we're going to start right out here with Misono Karin. So Karin is, of course, very cute, but more importantly, we take a look at her stats and we see that her attack and defense, they are pretty good. They are rather well balanced. She could almost be a balanced type, but she's a support type, which is actually better for MP generation. But yeah, she has pretty good attack and defense, and she actually has pretty high HP as well. But more importantly, as the type already told us, it's a support character, so we need to take a look at her actual abilities and skills and see how well she can actually support the team. So right off the bat though, just because she has 3 Excel lists, she can already support really well just by getting a lot of Excel combos out there. But that is like step 1. Step 2 is actually getting some buffs out. We're going to go very quickly over the connect, even though the connect is not very important. It just gives a bunch of attack up, has a chance to dazzle on attack and chance to Magia Seal on attack. Although, even though I've just said it's not actually that important, it actually is kind of important in some cases. And it is in the cases where the enemy is of a type where you have some characters on your team who have elemental advantage against an enemy. For example, let's say the enemy big boss is a light type, and you on your team, you have a dark type character. Then this connect would actually do something if you were to connect with the dark type character, because once they attack and dazzle the opponent, since dazzle is a level 3 status ailment, it makes it so the enemy takes increased damage from weak element. So your dark type character, they hit the enemy once, they get dazzled. Then once they dazzle, their next 2 attacks hopefully will deal bonus damage to the enemy because of the dazzle having that sort of effect on it. And more importantly, if that other dark type character was then going to use a Magia in that same turn, maybe even after they've dazzled the opponent, that Magia, of course, would also deal that bonus damage. So the dazzle can actually be used to get out a lot more bonus damage for characters. However, of course, the dazzle has to actually land, or the Magia Seal. However, the Magia Seal doesn't actually increase enemy the damage from weak element, but it's another effect that is there, I guess, if you wanted to make use of it. But more importantly, some characters, some enemies might be immune to dazzle in some EX challenge quests, or might have resistances to it. But I think a lot of Kimochi actually don't. So in Kimochi, it's actually pretty good to get enemy dazzled for bonus damage in that sense. But of course, only if you actually have characters that can make use of that by attacking weak element. More importantly, though, we take a look at the Magia. And Karin is a character who can use a lot of Magia because she's an Excel gorilla. So what does her Magia do? First off, defense down against the enemy 50% at Magia level 5. That's quite absurd. Just 2 of these and the enemy is literally on, not 0, on like 5% of what they usually have. And like it gives a minus 95% to defense, because that's the minimum the enemy can have, which is kind of ridiculous. And once again, pretty good against Kimochi. Because that's just a singular boss that you're fighting for 6 turns, and if on turn 2 or turn 3 you can already stack up this much defense down against the enemy, that's absurd. You know what's also really good against Kimochi is when you're playing a Magia team, giving your entire Magia team an almost 40% Excel MP gain up, like 37.5 MP gain up for everyone, Excel MP gain up that is. That's also pretty darn awesome. You use 2 of these, your entire team is sitting at like 70, over 70, like 75% Excel MP gain up, and this also lasts for 3 turns. Isn't that also pretty darn awesome? But it gets even better, because it also gives a 42.5% damage up to your entire party, which is actually one of the best effects that a Magia can actually do, one of the best support effects a Magia can do, because you might be wondering, but what about attack up? The thing is, there's so many Magia out there, like especially support Magia. If you just look at all the entire list of support characters, almost every single decent support character gives attack up to the entire party on their Magia. So at some point you're just gonna cap on attack up. Attack up can only go to 100%, and there's other characters that give like plus 40% attack up on their Magia, and characters usually enter battle already with like at least a 20% attack up by Moria. So just 2 of those other characters' Magia will put you on the cap on plus 100% attack. So what do you do at that point? How do you get more damage? Of course, with other damage buffs, and damage up is one of those other damage up effects. The other one would be, of course, like damage increase, which is just damage up with a hat. And then there's also, of course, Magia up. Some characters might have Magia up as well. Damage defense down against the enemy is another way of increasing your damage, or inflicting status ailments that increase damage to weak element like Dazzle. That is also another way to increasing damage. So as it turns out, Karin has multiple ways of increasing the damage your team does outside of attack up, which makes Karin one of the best supports in the entire game. Actually, right now, she's tied for best support in the entire game with Ao. I'm not going to talk about Ao today because he's neither cute nor gay enough to be in this video. However, that being said, like, Ao is also probably up there. They're both like tied on #1 spot. They both do slightly different things, but it is, I can't really stress just how much power is behind Karin as a support, because both the damage up is amazing. Oh, if you look at the damage up, like how many characters in the game actually give damage up on their Magia, we can look down here on their Magia, literally 4 characters, 2 of those give it to themselves, and the other is Ao and Karin. It's literally the 2 best support characters are literally the 2 best support characters because they're both the only ones to give damage up to everyone. But back to Karin herself. So, not only of course does she has the damage up, she also has the defense down on the enemy. Defense down is not going to do a whole lot against most enemies, but still it's another way of increasing damage that is awesome to have, and that you definitely want to have if you want to maximize damage as much as possible. While on the other hand, once again, of course, with the Dazzle, if you are fighting against, let's say, for example, Forest Kimochi, and you have not just Karin, but let's say, for example, some other firecracker like Kyoko in there, you can dazzle the enemy, and then you can have the Kyoko fire them up. The Kyoko is gonna hit a target that has basically 0 defense. She's gonna have the damage up on there. Maybe you have some other supports on there, like Rika&Ren or like Sayoki, for example, to give attack up, and that Kyoko will hit for like millions of damage on blasts. Or if that Kyoko gets Magia out, then that Kyoko is going to do like 10 million damage Magia easily. So that's pretty darn absurd. And I haven't even talked about the Spirit Enhancement yet. This is supposed to be mostly about the Spirit Enhancement, this video, right? Yes, but the thing is, the Spirit Enhancement about Karin is like the least interesting part about her. Like, I know I said before, usually that Spirit Enhancement is what makes characters in Arc 2 either good or bad, but the thing is, because also, especially against Kimochi, but also in ranked mirrors, like especially ranked mirrors and Kimochi, like these 2 nodes where you actually get ranked and get, like, for example, like S3 if you want to get that, these 2 modes just now specifically want you, the player, to play a Magia strategy. And because the game wants you to play a Magia strategy, suddenly Magia characters have become a lot more important, like Karin. And let's still go over the Spirit Enhancement, of course. So we have the 2 MP boost nodes that you would expect from everyone else, as well as 2 double up nodes. However, right off the bat, we see that the double up node is actually stronger than it is for most other characters. It gives 15% double damage up. And then we see something else that's really weird. That's a 3rd double up node in there, and not just that. There is, where is it? 2 more Magia damage up nodes in there. Oh my god, that is a lot of Magia damage. Let's just quickly go over this. Double damage up, by the way, increases damage of only the Doppel, but Magia damage up increases damage of both Doppel and Magia. So this is actually like a 5% bonus damage for Magia, but a 20% bonus damage for Doppel. You have to add them both for the Doppel damage. And another 20% here, another 20% there. This is a 60% damage up for your Doppel. That's pretty darn awesome. And then we see 15% more. Oh my god. We're at like plus 90% bonus damage for Doppel. And even if we're not using a Doppel, we're also doing like 30% bonus damage on Magia. So even though I've just told you how awesome she is for support, because her buffs are that amazing, her buffs and debuffs and ailments, she has everything. She has the best buffs in the game, the best debuffs and the best ailments. But even so, she also has incredible damage bonuses for her Magia with SE. That said, It's single target. It's like the one thing about Karin that if this was an AoE Magia, Karin would be the one of if not the best Magia character in the entire game, by the way. But because it's single target, not really. Because Kimochi, of course, they have multiple target fields and you're only gonna hit one of them. That said, with all of these bonuses, you're gonna do more damage than some other characters do with an AoE Magia. If you have type advantage at least, so that's something to keep in mind. You're still gonna do ridiculous amounts of damage, and of course, if you're fighting an enemy that's single tile, they just explode into tiny little pieces. So, of course, you can't do any of that if you've gotten either killed with curse. Oh, cool, we have anti-curse, awesome. And of course, you can't do any of that if you get Magia sealed. Oh, cool, we have anti-Magia seal 100%. We literally are immune to Magia seal. That's really cool. But man, you know what would make a support even better if they could apply status ailments on their attack. Oh, wait, you can do that. You know what would make a support even better? If they could use their active Memoria multiple times, even throughout the 6-turn battle, with maybe something like Skill Quick. No way, they have Skill Quick right here. Well, but what if he gets hit really hard and dies? Oh, just you wait. She kind of has a bit of everything, which is actually kind of absurd. Especially the Magia Seal is really awesome on some stages where the enemy really tries you not to use Magia, and you just go, I have Magia Seal, what are you gonna do about it? She also has 55% chance to ignore any curse cast on her, which is really good. And her active is actually really bad. Like, her active is actually one of the worst things about her. You can't have everything good about a character. It's only like a 25% defense down against one character for one turn, which is absolutely nothing. And that one character also takes 30 MP damage, which is also something that you barely ever use. Like, there's some cases where this can maybe be good, but for the most part, that's not that good. Way too situational. But ignoring her active, Karin overall is absolutely absurd how strong she is. And you might have been wondering, like, if you're playing on the North American server, you've been thinking to yourself, but I've not heard that much good stuff about Karin. Why is that? Well, it's just because on the NA server we didn't have Kimochi, and ranked mirrors was just about winning on turn 2. And guess what? Winning on turn 2 is best done with blast combos, and because Kimochi wasn't there, you didn't need these weird setups for Kimochi, and EX quests weren't that difficult, so you didn't need Magia setups. So on NA server, all you needed was blast, and if all you need is blast, Karin does fuck all. I mean, sure, she buffs blast characters, but why take an Exile character with you? You can just take another blast character with you and just win. Like Nanaka, double Ashley, whatever. That was good enough. But now on the Japanese server where Magia is actually important, Karin is a top tier character. Okay, so I talked a lot about Karin because she's absolutely amazing and we love her, and she's one of our favorite. She's everyone's favorite character. Let's also talk about Rika&Ren, who's also everyone's favorite character. Weird how that works. And the thing is, all of stuff that I've just talked about Karin, very similar stuff applies to Rika&Ren to some degree. However, right off the bat, we need to mention something very specific, very important, is the stats. Rika&Ren has way more attack than Karin has, so this makes Rika&Ren an attacker, and Rika&Ren is indeed not a support type but a Magia type. However, that sadly means that her defense is awful and her HP is down the drain. Rika&Ren is one of the most paper characters in the entire game. They fall over really easily, they have barely any defense, and they have barely any HP. They die really fast. I can't stress enough just how fast they die. Sometimes they get one-shot randomly by bosses, when other characters can take like 3 of their hits and still survive. They are made of paper and glass. However, that aside, that's already the worst thing about them, so don't worry, from now on it gets better. Like, this is literally the worst thing about them, but it gets better, okay? Their connect gives attack up, Excel MP gain up, which is both pretty good to have, but more importantly, the Excel MP gain up is of course really good if you're playing them on a Magia team, which you should, because they're also an Excel Gorilla, so you want to play them on a Magia team. But unlike Karin, who is more so to buff the entire team and debuff enemies, Rika&Ren are there to deal damage. They are the damage dealer, so they can at least still give Excel MP gain up to other characters on the team and still be helpful like that. And they can give evade, which is always cool to have. More importantly though, they deal attribute strength and damage to all enemies, which means they get increased damage against light type, because light type is the element that they are strong against. So light type enemies get absolutely destroyed by this, and if you combine this with Karin, by the way, and I just told you that Dazzle makes it so enemies take more damage from the enemy that is strong against them, and then you have attribute strength and damage right here, that actually stacks multiplicatively, which means that if the enemy is dazzled, like if it's a light type enemy that is dazzled and you hit them with this Magia, they will take billions of damage, maybe not billions of damage, but they will take ridiculous amounts of damage in such a way even that I think the best people in Kimochi battles, I think, reached over 1 trillion damage, like in a battle. Not in one battle, but across all battles that they did combined. They did like over 1 trillion damage or something absurd. Was it 1 trillion? Might have been 1 billion, like multiple billions even, many billions, 14 billions, I don't know, like ridiculous amounts of damage that you just can't even imagine because the damage stacking is absolutely absurd. What else do? They remove all debuffs from all allies when they use the Magia. Fine. I mean, there are some cases, like I said, this is also one of those things where when it is effective, you love having it. If your entire team is plagued by debuffs, this is amazing. But if you don't have any debuffs on you, there's nothing. So it's highly situational. Attack up, there it is, 40% attack up on your entire team. We talked about this earlier. Also really good. And regen HP, which is good if you want to stay alive. But if you're playing this in Kimochi, you don't really need to stay alive at all. The enemy is not going to kill you. The Kimochis don't really do that much damage, really. And also in ranked mirrors, you're gonna play for like 3 or 4 turns anyway, and so this doesn't do much anyway. So it doesn't really matter much. And of course, Doppel just does a bit more. It's Magia too, but it's basically Doppel, just does a bit more. Okay, now we go over the SE. So far they look pretty good, but with the SE we also see they have 3 Doppel nodes, but you see it does 5%, not 15%. And they also have 3 MP gain over 100 MP up, so they go from 100 to 200 really fast, really fast. So they basically just rush all the way over there to Magia 2, which is good because if you're support like Karin, you want to use multiple Magia. You don't want to use Doppel. You want to use multiple Magia so you can get these effects multiple times. If you're a damage dealer, you want the Magia 2 for the increased damage. So it makes sense that they have better ways to getting to 200 from 100. They also have anti-Magia seal, but only 55%. They have some chase, some evade, some more Magia damage up. They're looking pretty good, but nothing too crazy in here. Nothing too crazy in here. Their active is also not that great. Removes status ailments from self, which is one of the worst effects in the entire game. But at least it gives them immunity to status ailments for a turn, which is good. But once again, similarly to the remove debuffs down there, it's something that sometimes is nice. Sometimes, or rather most of the times, does nothing. So sometimes nice, most of the time does nothing. Overall, yeah, pretty good. They're pretty good Magia damage dealers, especially against light types. If you have these, and there's a light type Kimochi coming up, they will be your top damage dealer. But even so, they can also do some supporting with the attack up and some stalling with the regenerate. So overall, they're pretty good. Just keep in mind that they will explode instantly and and their actives aren't that great. So yeah, that's mostly about it. I'll talk very quickly about some Memoria, by the way, if you want to play XL teams. I'm not going to do this for other characters where I talk about more XL characters. But since it's the first time I'm really talking about XL characters like this, let's go over very quickly some Memoria that you want to use. But I can tell you right now, there's going to be something that all these Memoria have in common. But I'll talk about that later. First, we're waiting for the moment, which gives at maximum break 20% XL MP gain up and 20% damage increase. Awesome, a really good Memoria, one of the best XL Memoria in the entire game. And then we have Ido of the Midsummer Beach, 20% attack up and 12.5% MP gain up. Also one of the best MP gain Memoria in the entire game. They're both kind of the same, just that they do slightly different things, but still mostly the same. And for actives we have one to cover this and that from Swimsuit Sakurako. Also XL MP gain up and damage increase for 3 turns. For 3 turns, awesome. And because she shines too brightly, also once again attack up and MP gain up. Once again for 3 turns, awesome. All of these Memoria are really good, and if you had all those 4 Memoria on one character, that Memoria, like let's say on Rika&Ren, they would do ridiculous amounts of damage and rush to Magia in like a single turn and then do it again next turn. That's really awesome. What's the thing that all of these 4 Memoria have in common? They're all limited. They're all limited. They're all limited Memoria. All of the best XL Memoria in the entire game are all limited, which really sucks hard. I've always said this before, that Maga teams aren't necessarily better than Blast teams, but they're definitely more expensive. That was it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.